Well, all sights are on the Windy City, the DNC, next week, and Muslim leaders and others expecting 100,000 pro-Palestinian demonstrators and more to show up in Chicago. Three main protests are being planned for Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which will be focused on the Israeli-Palestinian war. The goal here is to push President Biden to arrange a permanent ceasefire and work toward a Palestinian state before he leaves office. Yeah, good luck with that. The convention will be hosted, as I said, in Chicago, which marks its 12th time in nearly the last 30 years. Chicago announced earlier this month that the city has begun installing bleeding control kits in 269 buildings across the city in a new program called Safe Chicago. Bleeding control kits. With almost 3,000 shootings and over 600 homicides this year, Chicago's Office of Emergency Management claims this will be just another layer of security and protection for the city. Joining me now to discuss this is Chicago resident and host of Behind Enemy Lines, Terry Newsome. Terry, thank you for being here.
How are you, Steve? Thanks for having me.
Look, I'm headed there tomorrow to set up camp. I'm thinking about taking my battle gear. Look, I think it's going to be wild. And I've never understood why the Democrats thought it would be a good idea to go to Chicago. I thought it was a bad plan. They don't need Illinois anyway, right? Doesn't change anything in the trajectory. And Chicago is a volatile place. And now you've got what I'm reading, and you're probably reading the same thing, 100,000 people or more coming in to protest and create chaos and havoc in the streets, right? It's going to be a mess.
Yeah, so the reason they came to Chicago is because Pritzker had his presidential ambitions. He gave $100 million of his own money to get it to Chicago. So that's where that came from. What came out today locally is that there's international Antifa, 30,000 of them that are already here in Chicago that came from all over the place. One of the organizations that's helped with the coordination of it is a couple of Chicago Antifa folks. I'm not going to mention their names. And they've been a target of the federal government and local law enforcement, went to prison multiple times, were responsible for, if you remember a few years back at Grant Park with the 125 police officers were beat up for the Columbus statue. It's the same guys, same group, and they aligned with them. My podcast is called Behind Enemy Lines. They started one using the same name for the coordination effort of this event with these other groups. So they're quarterbacking it. These are full-time anarchists who are quarterbacking this with these other organizations.
So here's the problem for the Kamala Harris campaign. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Look, the news media once again insulating the Democrat candidate for president, even though today she made it quite clear she's not a Democrat. She's a full-on communist and wants central planners to decide who makes the bread, how much people get paid to make the bread, and how much they're allowed to charge to sell the bread. So she wants complete central planning. She just announced that within the last hour. That's nuts. But these folks are going to make it's going to be chaos. There will be violence. There will be fistfights. There will be confrontations. There will be tear gas. There will be police in the streets. Chicago's not prepared for this, not in my estimation. And there's no way the major news markets and media's going to be able to ignore this time. It's going to be on TV. It's going to be on the newspapers. You can't avoid this one because it will be everywhere on social media and everywhere else. Don't you think?
Yeah, so this is what just ignited it yesterday. And there's an announcement. The National Lawyers Guild is going to defend anyone that gets arrested tomorrow on the protester side. So right there, they're going in knowing that if they get arrested, they're going to have representation. So that's just going to ignite what's going on. I don't know if you've been following it. They also, the Israeli folks, the Israeli supporters wanted to get a permit. Chicago said no. I wish they had the opportunity to protest themselves, but I'm glad for them because if they will be a target if these people show up. And then to make matters worse, you have a lot of African Americans, if you've been following Ben and Steve and some of my buddies from the inner city that were ex-Democrats, the African Americans are upset and angry at the Democrats. So they're going there.
Of course they are.
They're going to protest the Democrats. And Mayor Daley in 1968, for those of you who don't know Mayor Daley, he was a rough, gruff guy. When they were looting, he said, shoot to kill. Right? We have Mayor Johnson now, and all the commercials and the local news now is talking about how they train the police to peacefully handle these people. I have a friend that's a senior person there, and he said it's going to be a mess. Just what you said, Steve. It's going to be a mess.
How do you train for be peaceful, de-escalate, and then you get punched in the face or hit with a brick or worse? I mean, that's stupid.
I just left with some senior GOP folks for lunch, and so the city of Chicago, they reached out to DuPage. I'm in DuPage County, the second biggest in the state of Illinois. They reached out to the sheriff of the local law enforcement. They wanted 300 from DuPage. They said no. Can you blame them? Because the city of Chicago arrests police officers before criminals. So how are you going to send these guys into a battle zone when they're already telling?
Wait, let me get this straight. So DuPage County just said we're not sending anybody.
They said no, and can you blame them? You know, they're supposed to.
And that's interesting because I was just in Milwaukee. We were set up for the RNC, and you saw police officers from all over the country, sheriff's deputies, local police, different municipalities all over the country. Are you telling me that the people that would normally come to Chicago to help out, at least some of them are saying we're not going to be part of it?
Yeah, DuPage County is adjacent. They're supposed to reciprocate on emergency type situations. The sheriff said he's not going to send his men into it. I mean, think about it. These guys, they try to do their job. It's either defend their lives and do their job, or defend their employment and their income for their families.
It's going to be like a war zone, isn't it? I mean, honestly, Terry, I don't mean to overstate this, or it's going to be a war zone because Chicago is underprepared. They don't have the resources to deal with it. You've got a mayor who has no idea how to run anything except his mouth, and so you've got real problems. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, it's going to be a war zone. We got an event on Sunday with Charlie Kirk and Flynn and others. Antifa has already sent the flyer, and they did their slashes. I don't know if they're going out to the Western Burbs. Ben and I are going to be going out there. And so they have so many of them in the city of Chicago now. I'm not sure if they're going to try to disrupt this event, but it's going to be a war zone. It's going to be worse than 1968. They're more organized. They're more funded. And they're going to have way more people. Mark my word.
Terry, I have been making that same prediction for a year. It's going to be worse than 1968. I've said that for a year on this program. I believe exactly what you're saying, sir. We'll be in touch because I'll be there. We'll probably talk again here in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.